February 13th, 2024 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools is hereby called to order. I'm just a couple minutes late, so thank you for your grace. Okay, I'm just going to take a point of privilege. I would like to explain some changes to the meeting tonight. At our January 11th board retreat, we discussed ways of streamlining the meeting. We have removed many of the preambles from most agenda topics. We learned at our WASDA meeting in November that as a small board, we can vote by general consent for the meeting agenda and the consent agenda, and we did discuss this with council. We hope this lessens the unnecessary time and focuses our meeting time really on the business before us each night, including all of the wonderful recognition tonight. So I will move on now to section 2.0, the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast, Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deepest respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belongings for all students, teachers, staff, and community. Thank you. We'll now move on to section 3.0, the flag salute. If you are wearing a hat and not in uniform, please remove your hat and please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you to all the little voices I heard. We will now move on to the roll call. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mitchell.
Present.
Vice President Herman.
Present.
Director Adkins.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Director Revelinsky. Student Representative Gilbertson.
Present.
Student Representative Kink.
Present.
Thank you. We will now move on to section 5.0, the adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, were there any changes to the agenda after it was published?
Yes, Madam President. There have been two changes to the agenda. On item 6.02, recognition of 2024 Prodigies for Peace Competition winners, a middle school winner was added, and the presentation attached to item 13.02, instructional materials overview and adoption schedule was updated. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the meeting agenda being adopted by general consent? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted by general consent. We'll now move on to, honestly, the best part of the meeting. Section 6.0, which is recognition. We will begin with the Jackson High School Chamber Orchestra. Ms. West or Kathy Reeves?
Yes, hi, Director Mitchell and President Mitchell, Board of Directors, and Dr. Saltzman. We actually have three amazing recognitions tonight. Yes. And so we wanted to start by first having the Jackson Orchestra play. Melanie West is going to introduce it. But when they start to play, we'd ask that you get up from the dais and step out here so you can actually watch them perform. And then we can come back when they are done. So
Sounds
Melanie
wonderful.
West.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us today. Today you will hear Jackson Chamber Orchestra 1, and they just qualified for state on Saturday, and they will play Waltz from Serenade for Strings by Tchaikovsky.
Okay, now we're moving on to, I want to thank I want to thank Ms. West and the students for coming tonight for that. Prodigies for Peace.
Yes, our next recognition is an annual tradition for Everett Public Schools. We will be recognizing our Prodigies for Peace winners, and they will be introduced by Joy, the award will be introduced by Joy Grant, and each of the regional superintendents will introduce the students. Once the regional superintendent introduces the students, we ask that you would just come up front and stay up front. We'll take a group photo at the end, and parents, at that time, you'll be able to take a picture of your students as well. Joy Grant.
Good evening, Director Mitchell, Board Chair, to all of our Board of Directors, our student representatives, and Dr. Salzman. As introduced, my name is Joy Odom Grant, and I am the Director of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Department. This year, the Snohomish County Black Heritage Committee held a two-day event in January. It starts with me, not a commemoration, it's a continuation, to celebrate the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As part of the celebration, students were invited to submit essays and art for the 23rd annual Prodigies of Peace contest. The Prodigies for Peace Writing and Art Contest helps students draw connections between the people and the events that shaped the civil rights movement and the social issues that influences their lives today. For art, this year's theme, from Dr. King's message, we need to go from our individual concerns to the concerns to all humanity. For writing, students in grades 6 through 8 and 9 through 12 to write an essay on the following question. Dr. King gave his I Have a Dream speech on August 28, 1963. That was over 60 years ago. And still, there are times of challenge and controversy, from education to equity under the law. With all the challenges and controversies of today, where do you stand, and how would you make the stand today, or make the stand known? Students earning first, second, third, and honorable mention awards in each grade band and each creative category are honored for their inspirational works at the community celebration. This year, Everett Public Schools had 5 winners for their essays and 21 winners for their artwork. The 2024 Prodigies for Peace winners are below, and they will be recognized by their superintendents. Thank you all for your support. At this time, each regional superintendent will recognize their school's individual student winners. Dr. Pete Meisner, Dr. Kathy Woods, and Larry Fleckenstein. Thank you all again.
All right, we are so excited to recognize Region 1 has 3 outstanding students tonight. So as I call your name, students, just come on up. In art, in the grade band for 3rd through 5th grade, receiving 3rd place, 4th grade student, Damian James from Garfield Elementary School. Okay. Also in art, in the grade 3 through 5 band, receiving 3rd place, 4th grade student Lailani Martinez from Garfield Elementary School. Okay. Also in art, in the grade 3 through 5 band, receiving honorable mention, 4th grade student Maria Ponce Williamson from Garfield Elementary School. All right. I would like to invite Dr. Kathy Woods to recognize students from Region 2.
It is a great honor to recognize the 14 students who are award winners, all in art, from Region 2. So we will start with, in the 6th through 8th grade band, an honorable mention for 8th grade student Carla Hernandez Guzman from Evergreen Middle School. Also, with an honorable mention from Evergreen Middle School 6th grader Naomi Casa. From Jefferson Elementary School in the grade band 3rd through 5th graders, an honorable mention for 4th grader Olivia Birch from Jefferson Elementary. In the kindergarten through 2nd grade band, 1st place goes to 2nd grader Stella Blackwell from View Ridge Elementary School. Second place for the kindergarten through 2nd grade art winners is 2nd grader Logan Grant, also from View Ridge Elementary School. And also 2nd grade from View Ridge Elementary School, 3rd place is Beverly Nguyen in art. And also from View Ridge Elementary School, 2nd grader McKenna Stuck Antrim, honorable mention. From View Ridge Elementary School, Antonio Pacasio, honorable mention in art. And in the 3 through 5 grade band, 2nd place is 4th grader Van McKnight from View Ridge Elementary School. And the 3rd through 5th grade band, an honorable mention for 5th grader Aaliyah Martinez from View Ridge Elementary School. In the kindergarten through 2nd grade band, a 2nd place art winner is 1st grader Easton Wee Wee from Whittier Elementary School. Also from Whittier Elementary School in the kindergarten through 2nd grade band, an honorable mention for 1st grader Mia Torres Ramirez. Honorable mention as well, same grade band, 1st grader from Whittier Elementary School, Nora Fricano. And art winner, K through 2nd grade, honorable mention from Whittier Elementary School, Katya Hernandez. And now Mr. Larry Fleckenstein will introduce the students winners from Region 3.
Well, thank you. Well, from Region 3, we have 9 students who are being recognized this evening. And to begin, we have essay winner in the 6th through 8th grade category. 1st place, 5th grader Joy Data from Forest View Elementary. Next, we have art winner in the 3rd through 5th grade category. First place, 5th grader Siri Vulupula from Forest View Elementary. We have art winner in the 3rd through 5th grade category as honorable mention, 5th grader Prajval Vinay from Forest View Elementary. Next, we have an essay winner in the 6th through 8th grade category. Second place, 6th grader Ashleen Sharma from Gateway Middle School. Next, we have essay winner in the 3rd through 5th grade category. First place, 3rd grader Rishan Ramaya from Mill Creek Elementary. Next, we have essay winner, 3rd through 5th grade category. Second place, 4th grader Layla Ishiguro from Mill Creek Elementary. Next, we have essay winner, 3rd through 5th grade category. Third place, 4th grader Astrid Hafner from Mill Creek Elementary. Next, we have an art winner, 3rd through 5th grade category, honorable mention, 5th grader Manuth Segal from Mill Creek Elementary. And finally, from Region 3, art winner in the 3rd through 5th grade category as honorable mention, 4th grader Shrestha Shetty from Tambark Creek Elementary.
Amazing job. Now I'm going to see if you can follow some directions, okay? Can I have Forest View and Whittier, can you stand, take about 3 steps forward? And View Ridge. There you go. And then you guys, can you kind of scoot around behind them because you're a little bit taller? Because we got to get everybody in this picture. And Board, if you could stand up. Yeah, how about right over here on this side? Now everyone's got to get real squishy if you can, okay? Kathy, can you push that a little bit? I think that might work. Okay. Got to hold up your awards, okay? Everybody smile. 1, 2, 3. And now stay like that so your parents can get pictures, okay?
Lots of cameras.
Okay, a couple more and we're almost done. Okay, I think we got it. Thank you, everybody.
Nice job, everybody. Nice job.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move on to our final recognition. And just so you know, after you've received your recognition, it is okay to go home if you want to. You don't have to stay for the whole board meeting, okay? No problem. So the last recognition tonight is our core value champions. And these are the students being recognized for the January core value of passion. And again, after the principal announces the student, please stay up front and we'll take a group picture. We have 4 tonight. We have sorry, I just elevated you to president. Principal Kathy Stillwell from Garfield. We have Principal O'Connor Weaver from Tambart Creek, Principal Wentworth from Whittier Elementary, and Principal Takeyoshi from Cascade High School, in that order. So take it away.
I will take that promotion. Thank you so much. I'm very excited to introduce the core value champion, Ellis Lorio. Come on up, Ellis exemplifies the core value, all the core values in our district and at Garfield. Couldn't be more proud. He is passionate about learning, but he is also passionate about helping others. And he's on our service leadership team. He helps when we have new students join Garfield, giving tours and making them feel part of our family, helping out with the younger grade levels in kindergarten and first grade, helping out with patrol. You get the theme here, helping out in his classrooms, just all around, just awesome. Couldn't be more proud, and we're so excited. So congratulations, Ellis.
Hello, I'm so excited for this award. We get to give Philip Griffin the Passion Award, and this is what his teacher said about him, and she's here tonight in the back, Miss Chung. She said, Philip is very passionate about topics that excite him. He is always doing his best to learn more and share information about these topics. His joy and excitement are contagious. It's so fun being able to listen and watch him learn about his passions. I admire his desire and ability to follow his dreams at such a young age. Keep up the great work, Philip.
Well, I want to introduce Fernando Carmona Sanabria. So these are the comments from Fernando's teacher, Mrs. Franco, who's also here tonight. Fernando has a passion and the most positive attitude in helping others. He is always growing his brain even when things are hard and making sure everyone's hearts are feeling good. He always has a smile on his face. That's all day, every day. And I can't tell you how amazing that is for any classroom in any school. He cheers people on and tells them what they shine at. And his passion for positivity makes the classroom and school such a wonderful place to learn for everyone. Congratulations.
Good evening. I would like to introduce our winner, Cascades winner for Passion, Josh Iriola Cortez. Okay, so Josh is the kind of student that I feel like I've been reminded every year is not a senior. He's a junior, but every year I feel like he's a senior, right? He is one of those students who is ubiquitous. You see him everywhere at every event. I swear if you've been at an event at Cascade High School, you probably talked with Josh. Josh, here's what his teachers have said. Josh absolutely embodies passion. He never fails to be a leader in the classroom, a friendly presence to all. He's passionate about leadership, service, and I love the most, science. He is always a student to volunteer to help others. He regularly checks in to see how my clubs are doing. Josh immediately stood out as a passionate learner from 9th grade. Stood out to me his kindness towards others, his instinctive ability to communicate with peers and adults, and this is my favorite. Josh has a great ability to start the conversation to get others involved. Josh, we're honored to recognize you as our core value champion for passion. Congratulations.
Principals, can I have you help center the group, and the board's going to stand up? And if you're a teacher here and you're nominated, you can come up in the picture too. Or you can take a picture, but if you want to be in the picture, you can. That would be great. Okay, Director Mason, can you take one little step to, there you go, perfect. All right, 1, 2, 3. Can you get in? Go ahead and get in. There you go. Oh, that's awesome. Let the parents get some. All right, thank you very much.
Yeah, good. That's a really good thing. Core values.
I'm just waiting.
Nice.
A lot of people don't want to watch the rest of the meeting.
Well, that was wonderful, and the room literally, I think, just deflated. So now we move on to section 7.0, the superintendent's report. Dr. Saltzman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. Again, let me say, what a great moment to have amazing musicians, writers, and outstanding young citizens. It's what we do every day and why we do it every day. Second semester has begun. Can you imagine that? New challenges, growth, and make the most of every opportunity, students. Keep up the great work, stay positive, and let's make the second half of the year certainly one to remember. Last week, we took a moment in our district to appreciate our outstanding school counselors and honor them during School Counseling Week. Their dedication and support are invaluable in guiding students to reach their fullest potential. I am so grateful for the counselors and for what they do every day for our students. We recently had an incredible Let's Connect community event focusing on promoting healthy digital habits. The feedback we received from our families, students, and community helped drive these events, and we had over 104 people participated either in person or heard Dr. Lucia Maggs-Weinberg over Zoom. Please go to our homepage and to our parent university to find out more about this great opportunity of learning for our community. Did you know the cybernetic narwhals? Anybody know who they are? Well, they're our North Middle School robotics team. The sole public middle school representing at the W State Championship FTC Robotics Tournament last weekend. Way to go, North Middle, and huge kudos to Coach Fippard, Coach Aldermatt, the volunteers, and the entire team. Way to go. Please join us this week on February 15th to discuss our budget. That'll be 6 p.m. at the Evergreen Middle School in the cafeteria. There'll be a brief presentation and opportunities for questions and to provide feedback on our budget. I also want to wish everybody a happy Valentine's Day tomorrow and thank all our teachers and everybody in the district, paraprofessionals, everybody that does everything for the Everett School District for what happened tonight with our amazing students. It takes everybody to make sure that these kids get what they need, and these were amazing students tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman. We'll now move on to section 8.0, board comments. Mr. Kink, would you like to begin?
Yeah, sure. Since our last board meeting, I had the pleasure of getting to travel to Olympia with the board, where we got to visit the Capitol building and talk to state legislators about funding for schools and issues in education. It was really great to share my experiences and have some one-on-one conversations with people like John Levick and April Berg. We did our best to talk to them about higher funding for paraeducators and classified staff, and I think things are moving in the right direction based on what they said, but I think there's also still a lot of work we can do, so we need to keep pushing for that. Back at Jackson, first semester wrapped up well, and at the moment we're in the midst of our ASB executive elections, where we elect a new cabinet for our ASB executive team, which the whole school gets to vote in. Other than that, I'm looking forward to midwinter break. It's a great period of rest for some students, although I wish it was a little bit longer.
So we got to go to Olympia 2 weeks ago. Yep. And like a lot of the stuff Will said, he covered it very well. But we got to talk about funding for paras a lot. And we got to meet with a bunch of legislators. It was very quick. It was like we were in there for 8 to 15 minutes and out right to the next one around all of those big buildings. And they really appreciated hearing the student input and even hearing our board members' input when they gave it too. And overall, it was a really good experience. And for the priorities, they were really trying to get to them. But I know they told us like a lot of the stuff was like, that's our next big thing for next year because they have so much to focus on all the time. And then report cards are coming out soon. Exciting, kinda. And as well as midwinter breaks coming up soon. And I hope everyone has a great midwinter break. And also Everett High just got the new tardy system in place at our school, which is interesting to say. A lot of students have either like it or don't like it. It's very mixed. And so, yeah, that's how it's been going.
Thank you. Dr. Mason.
Thank you. First, I just want to say what an amazing performance by the Jackson High School Chamber Orchestra. They were unbelievable. And congratulations to all the students that were in the boardroom tonight. Of course, we always appreciate that when we get the kids in. It's fun. I was able to watch the presentation on Let's Connect, and I think it's a great start to a conversation around cell phone use in our schools. And I look forward to continuing that conversation, especially as more research comes out on the topic that helps inform us on best practices and districts that are sort of taking the lead on it. And then I got to participate in the mock interviews, which is one of my favorite things to do with the high school students, both at Everett High and Jackson High School. Very different interviews at different schools. It's really fun to learn the flavor of each school when you do that. Just really enjoyed meeting our young people and hearing about their next steps and excitement as they leave us soon. And then lastly, on the entertainment side, I got to go to the boys and the girls Everett High basketball game, and both teams have done exceptionally well this year. And it was certainly, we didn't come away with a win, but just so much fun, such great support for our Everett High team from the community in that area. So it's always a joyous occasion. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't have too much to report. I joined Directors Herman and Mitchell at the WASDA Legislative Conference a couple of weeks ago. Heard some great talks by Senate and House Education Committee chairs and, of course, Superintendent Reichdahl. In my day job, I also got the opportunity to attend the Education Committee of the Affiliated Tribes and Northwest Indians a few weeks ago, and got some really good insight into the state of Indian education in Oregon and Alaska, and just hearing about some of the very innovative programs that they're implementing in those states, and just thinking about how we might be able to do that kind of stuff here in Washington. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you. Dr. Herman.
Thanks. Big congratulations to the students we recognize tonight, and thank you to the Jackson High School Chamber Orchestra for their performance and their win over the weekend. We have a lot of accomplishments and outstanding students in our district, so I also want to thank our communications department, who really does an excellent job of sharing out the many celebrations in newsletters, notices, and social media. I know our families appreciate it, and as school directors, it is really, truly wonderful to see. Also, the mock interviews as well. I was able to participate in interviewing students at Jackson High School. And for this, the students bring their resume. And at the end of the interview, a part of the discussion with students is about asking them about what they learned from the class, the College and Career Readiness Seminar around financial literacy, which is an important topic that young adults need to learn. So a big thank you to Sarah Pewitt, our high school and beyond facilitator, for that invitation. Those mock interviews, I also, it's a highlight for me as well. The Legislative Conference and Day on the Hill at the end of January, I want to thank the staff and especially our student representatives for making the trip down, missing the day of school and being such active participants. We were learning how to be better advocates for students in education and share our priorities with our legislators and policymakers. But really, to our student reps, you both did fantastic. And as we had mentioned before, you really are the star of the show down there. So thank you for your messages. And then lastly, around the Let's Connect on promoting healthy digital habits. That was an excellent night. I want to thank the parents and students who came out to that event and those who watched it online. I really enjoyed the discussion at our table. And I think, like, as you were saying, I also want to encourage our families and schools to continue to have those conversations. As one father pointed out, parents of our students, myself included, are of a different generation, didn't grow up with online technology. And so this is something we need to be discussing and figuring out together. So thank you for the district staff for organizing the event. And I look forward to more Let's Connect sessions with families around important topics like these. Let's keep the conversations going. So thank you.
Thank you. So since our last meeting in January, we have had many meetings about the strategic plan, the budget, and as well as previously mentioned, Olympia. And I'm going to be the third person almost jumping on the bandwagon here about enjoying the interviews that I did both at Jackson and Cascade of the seniors. But what I really thought of with those students is I had 3 ML students. One who moved here 10 years ago apologized for some of her word usage, and I said I didn't notice a deficit. That 8 years here really does make a difference. Met a young man who moved here when he was 14. Now he's a senior. English was very good. Said, how are you doing this? And he goes, well, I practice with Duolingo every day, and I communicate with my friends from my home country and force them to learn English. And so he's learning and teaching, which I just think is phenomenal. And then the third young man, I was told English was definitely a second language. And so the benefit of Google Translate, and that I noticed he played soccer, so we could talk soccer and being a midfielder, because my daughter was a midfielder. And just to see him light up when you can talk about something that's of interest to him. And I was talking to somebody else about the power of sports, especially in our immigrant children. That how that was able to carry on. And then again with sports, Jackson High School is playing at Mount Si tonight at 7 o'clock, and I do wish those young men the best. So thank you. Now is our time, section 9.0 for public comment. Dr. Saltzman, have there been any requests for public comment?
Not at this time, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Now we will move on to section 10.0, legislative updates. Director Herman, I believe you have a number of updates.
Oh, yeah. So we are now more than halfway through the 2024 legislative session. This is week number 6. And we just cleared the latest cutoff. Today at 5 o'clock was the last day to pass bills out of the House of Origin. So those introduced in the House or the Senate needed to have fully passed their side and now begin the process on the opposite chamber. WASDA began this session in January following 213 bills in education. That was whittled down to 76 last week, and today's cutoff will be reducing that even more. For bills that line up with our Everett priorities, a few stand out, ones that are still in the running. The bills that were specifically around increasing paraeducator and classified staff pay are no longer in play, but the second substitute Senate Bill 5882 did make it through the Senate last week. This relates to increasing prototypical school staffing to better meet student needs. It includes increased allocations for paraeducators, office support staff, and non-instructional aides in the prototypical school funding model, which is great, and specifically is intended to support increased staffing, prevent layoffs, or increase salaries for those staff. This will be heard in House Appropriations on Thursday. We have signed in support of this bill, and again, just to manage expectations, these are incremental adjustments. One that we are also very hopeful for and just passed this afternoon in the House was House Bill 2494, increasing state funding for operating costs in schools. The bill would update and increase the per pupil amount for materials, supplies, and operating costs, what we call MSOC, in the state prototypical school funding formula. So this is a big one, not necessarily as a big amount, but this gets at our operating costs such as insurance, utilities, and curriculum, which is something we'll be talking about tonight. So this would be one that would directly help our bottom line, and it's a per student allocation. So that's exciting, and it's moving on. One of our Everett priorities was also around modifying the school transportation funding model to be more equitable. And related to this one is substitute Senate Bill 5873. There's actually two. I'm just going to report out on the Senate bill tonight, providing adequate and predictable student transportation, which passed through the Senate yesterday and is now on the way to the House. This requires OSBI to develop a transparent, predictable, and comprehensive student transportation funding model that addresses the diverse needs of the students and unique characteristics of school districts. This one, also has some updated language for districts that do contract out for busing, like we do here in Everett, to include a one-time supplemental transportation allocation to school districts that experience an increase in cost due to the new employee benefit requirements if this bill does pass and the new adjustments go into effect. So we'll keep an eye on that one. For our priority of advancing access to supports and services around social and emotional needs for all students, second substitute House Bill 2239 encourages school districts to provide instruction on skills that promote social, emotional behavior, and mental health and wellness. That passed out of the House yesterday. Also engrossed second substitute House Bill 1956, which requires OSBI to develop and make available classroom substance use prevention and awareness materials and adjust health and physical education learning standards for middle and high school students to add opioids to the list of drugs included in drug-related education. This is scheduled to be heard in the Senate Early Learning and K-12 Education Committee on Thursday. Related to our priority of multilingual education programs and services, the third substitute House Bill 1228 also passed through the House yesterday and establishes, subject to appropriations, grant programs for initiating and expanding dual language education programs and tribal language education programs. And lastly, one that aligns with our priorities and is sailing through, Senate Joint Memorial 8007, requesting that federal Congress pass and the president sign federal legislation to fully fund the 40% of the costs of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is IDEA. This is one that we've included in our talking points with our own federal representatives in Congress, and we have signed in as pro for the legislative record. And this will get a hearing in the House Education Committee tomorrow. So those are some of the bills that are in line with our Everett priorities that we have been tracking, that we developed in the fall. The House Education Committee tomorrow will be hearing a number of bills, including one concerning the burden of proof for special education due process hearings, and another one supporting the implementation of competency-based education. And the Senate Early Learning and K-12 Committee resumes as well. So other bills not necessarily on our priority list, but still affecting us in education with either policy or curricular implications are making their way through, and we'll continue to track those. The revenue forecast is expected tomorrow, February 14th, and the Senate has posted a public hearing on their 2024 capital budget proposal for Thursday, which we are hearing is much more favorable to K-12 education than the House version. And this is where the SCAP funding could potentially be. So the session continues, and the last day will be March 7th. So our next regular meeting will have another update. So those are bill-related. And one last reminder or notice is that WASDA, this is the window for us as directors to be thinking about any revisions that we would like to see on WASDA's advocacy platform for next year. WASDA currently has 225 member-adopted positions. The platform revision window will open March 11th and close April 8th. And so if there are any interest in this, please let me know. These are the positions that WASDA uses as their guiding principles in advocating, and we see each year that WASDA will not take a stance on any proposed legislation that doesn't have a member-adopted position to support it. This is also the basis of what we use for our Everett legislative priorities. So these positions really do guide our advocacy efforts. That's what I have for us today.
Thank you. Is there any questions or other discussion points? Okay, seeing none, thank you. We'll now move on to section 11.0, the consent agenda. Dr. Saltzman, have you received any questions about the consent agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the case of this consent agenda, the Superintendent's Office received and answered questions regarding the vouchers.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman. Does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in a new business section of the agenda? Is there any objection to adopting the consent agenda by general consent? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved by general consent. And we will now move on to section 12.0, strategic progress monitoring. There is none for this meeting. Information and discussion, section 13.0, we have 2 items tonight. The first is the December 2023 financial report. Ms. Tress.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman, President Mitchell, Board of Directors. Tonight, I will be discussing the December 2023 financial report. Along with this presentation and tonight's consent agenda item, accompanied a December financial report was provided with additional detailed information for your reference. Tonight, I will review the details of the general fund, the district's main operating fund, its enrollment, revenues, expenditures, and fund balance. Additionally, I will review the district's other 4 major comprehensive funds, including the capital fund, the debt service fund, the Associated Student Body Fund, or the ASB fund, and the transportation vehicle fund. The table on this slide represents the district's monthly enrollment for the past 3 years. Enrollment is one of the main drivers for the district's operating revenues. The district's enrollment trends continue to follow prior year patterns. We are seeing a slight increase from last year. The enrollment also continues to be anticipated to be higher than our adopted budget. I am cautiously optimistic this trend will continue for the remainder of the year. As you can see, the solid blue line is the enrollment for the 23-24 fiscal year, and you're seeing we have some upticks in our enrollment in October and November, and a relatively flat enrollment from our December. This is our annual average FTE, so it's the average of our student enrollment throughout the fiscal year. It differs from what you typically hear, which is our head count, which is the number of students on that day that we count in that regard. The annual average FTE is how our funding is calculated overall. As we look towards our revenues, we are projecting approximately $382.9 million in revenues for the fiscal year, which is no significant changes from the November revenue projections. We're seeing some slight decreases in our projected local non-tax revenues, primarily due to what we're actually receiving in the December month time frame. However, that's being offset by a slight increase in our projected state special purposes revenues. And again, that's primarily due to what we actually see in our state special purpose revenues. I also want to highlight on this slide here that the blue, this table represents the monthly revenues for the past 3 years, and that blue line that represents the dotted line is our 23-24 revenues, and it is following trends from the past prior years. What you will also see is when we get our January revenues and report that financial information to you, a slight uptick, because September, October, November, December revenues for the majority of our state revenues are based on our budgeted revenues, and January will start to reflect our actual revenues and actual enrollment numbers. Moving on to looking at our total projected expenditures, we are seeing a slight decrease overall, and that's primarily due to what we're actually seeing in our monthly expenditures here. That increase, we're seeing a slight increase in our material supplies and operating costs, or MSOCs, but however, our projections continue to be in trend with the higher than we originally budgeted. We are seeing decreasing in our staffing expenditures, and again, this is a very slight decrease overall, and projections, however, continue to be lower than our original adopted budget. What I want to highlight on the monthly trend over here on for the 23-24 fiscal year, that blue dotted line kind of represents our monthly actuals. We do see a downward trend through November, and that's primarily due to the fact that we had a Thanksgiving holiday, and that catch-up happened catch-up for the payments happened in December, where you see a higher than typical average in our December monthly timeframe. Another thing to note, we have adopted, not all of our salary expenditures are included in here, as we have 2 outstanding bargains, and those will be reflected. One was approved in a January board meeting, and I believe one will be hopefully approved today's board meeting. Those will be reflected in our our February and March payrolls, and those will reflect the actual cost for those increases in those bargaining units. Our projected ending fund balance has no significant changes. We are still anticipating a 7.8% projected ending fund balance. It does overall show a slight increase in overall projected ending fund balance. However, our fund balance calculated as a percentage of expenditures did not have a material changes. We are still seeing our projected expenditures exceeding the revenues by approximately $3 million. And again, as we move forward throughout the year, any major changes can swing our fund balance as a percentage of expenditures. Our December ending fund balance is 35.9 million, or 36 million rounded up. And this table represents the three-year monthly trend of our fund balance. And as I mentioned in the expenditure, when we were discussing the district's expenditures, we will see a slight downtick in our actual fund balance in the February, March timeframe as we true up the expenditures for our outstanding bargains. Looking towards our 4 other comprehensive funds, we'll start with our capital project funds. The capital project fund supports major capital and technology projects, which include replacements and modernizations of new buildings, as well as one device lifecycle management, building upgrades, and roofing projects. This table represents the monthly fund balance for the prior 3 years, for this year and the prior 2 years of the prior 3 years. The capital fund revenues have shifted slightly. We are now moving slightly. We are seeing our revenues primarily from levy and our state matching. However, in prior years, we had utilized bond proceeds. At this point in time, we don't have any outstanding local outstanding bonds approved by our voters. So we'll see that trend, the trend where we'll have an uptick in October and April when we receive the levy revenues. Appropriations are a portion of a multi-year project plan. So as we move forward throughout the project's monthly expenditures may increase, as well as we may have an increase in fund balance to help support some of our major projects through our levy as we utilize those funds and some of the larger projects we plan in the next year or 2. This also includes our annual $4.5 million levy transfer to the general fund, which the state requires us to transfer certain dollars to support capital projects, capital levy projects that have to be paid through our general fund overall. Looking at our debt service fund, we have an ending fund balance of $8.5 million. And the debt service fund is utilized for primarily the sole purpose of principal and interest of our outstanding bonds. What this table again represents our three-year monthly trend of fund balance. And what you'll see is an uptick in November and a decline in December is because our primary principal payment and interest is paid in December, and then we have an interest payment paid in June. This fund balance does fluctuate and will support our bond payment schedules, and ending fund balance will continue to decline unless we issue additional bonds. Moving on to our ASB student body, our Associated Student Body Fund, the December ending fund balance was approximately $1.6 million. This fund supports the student activities and athletics throughout the year. Fall is generally the high point due to the ASB and yearbook revenue sales, and so the major fundraisers happen at the beginning of the year for the schools. You will see the decline in fund balance, and we're starting to see that arc coming through overall if you look at that blue dotted line for the 23-24 fiscal year as we go forward through that process. Our transportation vehicle funds, November ending fund balance is approximately $221,000, and this is really to support the purchases of buses. We do anticipate state depreciation revenue to be received of approximately $325,000. Another thing to note, we had a capacity to purchase 3 buses this year. We are in the process of identifying 2 buses to purchase. However, we won't be receiving those buses until the beginning of next year, and so we will be moving that forward for next year, but we'll have enough fund balance to support the activities overall. All of our other state transportation funding goes through our general fund as we contract out our busing services overall. Thank you. Questions?
Are there any questions? Oh, seeing none? Ms. Tress, great job. And on our agenda, we actually did, on our timing sheet, had time for a break, but because we've been just moving along in a pretty quick clip, I will invite Dr. Bowden up for our next section, instructional materials overview and adoption schedule. I think I said Miss Dr. Bowden.
Well, good evening, President Mitchell, Board of Directors, Dr. Salzman, and I'd like to thank you for having me this evening to share with you our overview of our instructional materials and adoption forecast. So this evening, we'd like to share with you a little bit about the processes of selection and adoption of instructional materials with both current and long-term instructional material adoption needs in each area. We'll share what the drivers are for those curricula review and potential adoptions for each of those subject areas. We also would like to establish tonight a common understanding of some of the potential financial implications of long-term adoption and outline those next steps for you as well. So we have coordinated and aligned curriculum, and it allows us to really help achieve those 6 priority student outcomes. Of course, when we have standards aligned, articulated, and guaranteed and viable curricula, it empowers our system to ensure that literacy in 3rd grade, achievement in both math and in science. However, our coordinated curriculum also provides us opportunities for our system to close gaps for students. So when we have rigorous and relevant curricula that's being taught consistently throughout our system, we can make sure that we have that vertical alignment that students need to coordinate and ensure that students have access to those standards and address the needs to help them reach proficiency. Additionally, the standards alignment also with the coordination with regional industry partners as well as other employers within the area successfully help us to provide post-secondary success for our students. So when we have those dynamic instructional materials and they relate to the regional industry that we have, we can help provide students opportunities not just to be college ready, but also career ready. And finally, with both rigor and relevance, we're able to really focus on some differentiated instructional practices, development of critical thinking skills, and those instructional materials help to increase overall student engagement. So we use our procedure in 2311P, and that really outlines how we do adoption curricula, but we also wanted to provide just a few core definitions to help understand what curriculum means when we talk about it. So first we have core instructional materials. Now these are the essential curriculum materials that we utilize across all content areas. The core instructional materials are adopted directly by the school board, and you'll hear actually a presentation to the school board later on this evening about one of those adoption processes. But they're intended for use district-wide, and they're intended to be used by every teacher of that curriculum area with all students every year. Supplemental instructional materials support, enrich, expand, or individualize instructional experiences for students and maybe meets those specific needs of students throughout the district. These are not intended to supplant core curricula. These are intended to enrich, and actually these supplemental materials are not subject to board approval. These are actually selected and approved by the superintendent designee, most often me or one of the program directors. Temporary materials are intended for, just like they are said, temporary or one-time or short-term use. This would be in the case of perhaps a curricula not being supported very abruptly, or OSPI, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, might make a recommendation that that content is not supporting in those standards any longer. And so we would utilize the temporary process to do a short-term kind of fix to make sure that we can get through the next opportunity that we have for a core adoption. And then library instructional materials clearly make up the school library, but those are selected and vetted by the school librarians. That is really delegated to that professional teacher, and they take into consideration things like the quality of materials appropriate to the students, whether it's age appropriate or not, and the relationship to the learning standards and outcomes. Those approval of library materials, while vetted by the teacher librarian, are often delegated to the school administrator as designated by the superintendent. So when we engage in our core adoption processes, we begin by establishing a curriculum review committee that's composed of a represented group of professional staff, generally a really diverse group of the teacher practitioners who utilize the materials. The purpose of the committee is to conduct a needs assessment of the current practices and instructional materials, evaluate those instructional materials, and then select new instructional materials to be referred to the Instructional Materials Committee, or the IMC. To arrive at that referral, it's a pretty significant process, and this is just kind of summarized for you here. But we begin with reviewing state and national standards, research, literature to identify best instructional and assessment strategies, and then existing current district practices as well. We identify research-based instructional strategies and assessments, and this team develops criteria that applies to state and federal laws as well. It also encompasses the district mission, the district vision, of course our strategic plan, as well as district and state curricular standards. And then the criteria for selection of instructional materials is established in the appendix of Board Policy 2311 in the procedure in 2311P. We then solicit those instructional materials from publishers, and that's really kind of a different process now. Many of our curricula are actually digital. There's a lot of online resources, so it used to be like, let's get a whole bunch of books and let's review the books. We do some textbooks, we do some consumables, but we do a lot of online digital resources that really helps to complement our one-to-one platform that we utilize for our students. We also, though, because of that piece, we require all vendors to complete a digital resources review and submit that to the Learning Information and Technology Services, or our LITS partners. And they actually have to review that before we're able to bring that curricula forward through that process. So that's a pretty rigorous review process for that piece because we want to ensure that it's safe for students, it's sustainable, it will function with our hardware, with our software. Is it web-based or hardware-based? So all of those pieces are things that we factor into some of those, into that review process. We then actually solicit input from staff, a wider version of those teacher practitioners. We may engage in a pilot and have some students provide us some feedback. They, I will say, are very good at providing us very clear feedback about what they think about some of those curricular materials. And then we also offer public comment for our curricula. So we often will have an open house night where families and parents or community members can come in and review that material, take a look through our process. We have a criterion tool that they use to review those pieces and provide us feedback as well. After all of those different pieces and in consultation with the Chief Academic Officer, that team then develops an implementation plan. How do we want to roll that out? What does that look like? What are the needs for training? And then they make a referral to that instructional materials committee. And only after it goes through all of those processes and all of the instructional materials committee, then does it get presented to the board of directors for our first reading at a board meeting. So you may be wondering why we even need a curriculum forecast. We could just make a decision. But what we need to do is we recognize that periodically the state reviews the standards to ensure they're meeting the needs of our students. Often there's new research about a specific content area. So for example, we have data science now as a class at our high schools. 10 years ago, that really didn't even exist. And so we have to think about some of the changes in the skills and knowledge that employers in our area are telling us are the most important to the workforce. We want to ensure the standards are suitable for specific grade levels. And we want to stay current with ever-changing technological society. So we've had a lot of innovations where we're able to include those in some of our pieces when we're looking at some of the review. And then most states actually review and revise their standards every 5 to 10 years. Washington's English Language Arts, or ELA, and math and science, or excuse me, ELA and math were adopted last by the state in 2011. And science was adopted in 2013. So now they are really due for a review. Along with parallel Spanish language arts, or SLA, which is the content that we use in our dual language programs, math, science, and ELA and SLA have begun their review. They actually began last year. They believe that science and math will probably remain the same at this point. They're still revising the ELA standards. And the latest update that we received from the state was that ELA will be completed in December of '24. So that kind of gives us an idea about when we might see what those new standards or revised standards might look like. And it's been about 10 to 12 years since our ELA math and science standards have been revisited at state level. And so because of the established cycle from the state, and we developed this forecast of about 10 years. Ours, of course, has been impacted by some deferments due to pandemic and some budget constrictions. But we need to reset and move forward to ensure that our students are getting what they need to achieve at high levels. So in short, our work with our procedure 2311 ensures that our curriculum is really inclusive of all cultures and also reflects the families and students within our communities. That's a really important part for our students to see themselves in that content area. With increasing innovation and technology, it really creates opportunities for us, but it also creates some unknowns to meet the learners of meet the needs of learners in new and engaging ways. So we know that maybe some things we could plan for something to happen, but we get some new innovation, something we didn't anticipate, and we may need to take that into consideration and modify and revise our schedule. Finally, we need to continue to assess priority and timing of availability of high quality standards aligned material, and also take into consideration those substantive costs to the district to make sure that we can balance our budget and also provide students with a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So when we think about costs for curriculum adoptions, we break it into 3 parts. We have adoption committee costs, we have initial use costs, and we have what we call year one implementation costs. So on those adoption committee costs, that's the costs we incur when we're actually going through the process of reviewing current curriculum, reviewing those standards, doing some publisher review, all of those pieces. We're not actually purchasing the curricula, but it does take some time to release the right staff to bring them to those, committees, to be able to get them to review that work without having the burden of their regular day job in their classrooms. So really, if we want that feedback, we have to make the financial commitment to include those staff so that they can help us with that process. Adoption committee costs also provide support for, like, if we have an evening presentation to families or we want staff to be there. Also provide for supporting of any piloting materials if we needed to purchase some of those if they weren't gratis from a publishing company. Initial use also tends to be a relatively high, significant cost for us. And this is what we call that teacher training. After the adoption process is completed with the board and we've gotten approval, we now look to what are the training pieces that we need to put in place. We need to buy the teacher manuals. We need to buy the materials and subscriptions, potentially some student samples, and additional hours for professional learning for implementation. One of the things that we really take a lot of pride in is when we actually adopt curricula, we don't just say, hey, here's the book, there's the table of contents, good luck, let us know if you need anything. We actually spend a really significant amount of time developing professional learning that's relevant to the teachers, that gives them the opportunity to think about how we can best serve our students utilizing that curricula. With some shifts that we've had in the last few decades around math instruction, with our new illustrative math, we found out that we really wanted to ensure that we had opportunities to build the capacity of the staff in the buildings around that. So it's not just a one and done, it's how do we build sustainable professional learning? And a lot of that initial use is really intentional, really deep dive into the curricula so that teachers and instructional staff feel prepared to teach that in the next year. And then finally, we have year one implementation. This is actually another big cost. This is student use of materials, subscriptions, if we have to buy consumables, and then additional support training, so implementation leaders, building that capacity so that they have what they need to be able to start the year off. So it's not just we do summer training and say good luck. We do summer training and then we revisit in the fall. We provide additional supports. We often do a review at the end of the first year to see how things went, what do we need to adjust, how do we need to tweak things. So those are the costs just for curriculum adoptions. So what I'd like to do now is go through some of the forecasts that we have. Here's our English language arts adoption forecast, starting with in 27-28, core ELA 612, at the cost of $665,000. ELA for the P5 grouping, we've broken that into two pieces because it's a substantial cost when you're talking about 6th grade levels, particularly around English language arts. We know that the adoption costs of the initial use of training that many P5 teachers on top of the instructional materials in that year one implementation are significant. You can't have an ELA adoption in primary classes without lots and lots of books. We want to have that literacy-rich environment. So we've broken that into two phases to kind of defer the cost a little bit. And then in 28-29, AP Lang and AP Literature, and then in 29-30, some of our college and the high school and University of Washington English. So over the course of this forecast, we're really looking at about $3.1 million over those 7 years. And this is really driven by the adoption cycles in 612, we're in 2012 and 2016 for P5. And then we've got some standards revisions, which are expected to be implemented in 2026, as well as we have a new state assessment coming in 2028, which will be aligned to those revised standards. So we'll want to ensure that we have opportunities to look at those standards once they're revised. And if we need to manage or tweak that, then we can have the opportunity to do it. But this is the target for ELA. In mathematics, you will maybe remember that we just recently had some mathematics adoption for our elementary. So we're really looking at secondary math in the next 7 years. Pre-calculus in 25-26 at the cost of $30,000. It's a relatively smaller adoption as opposed to math 6-8 and math 9-12 in 28 and 29 respectively at the cost of $600,000 to $200,000. Over the next 7 years, we're looking at about $830,000. And again, that new target for the target of 2028 for that new assessment is really one of the biggest drivers that we have there. In science and engineering, we are looking at a P5 science over the course of 25 and 26, all the way through 27 for implementation. Again, when you are talking about a P5 implementation, that's a very large population of 6th grade levels. And also the training components of those different pieces will be substantial. So we broke that into 2 phases. And the real driver for that particular one is that our last adoption were over 12 years ago, and 9/11 is on a 10-year cycle. So we've had some recent adoption for science at the secondary level, but that's 10 years. We did that science at high school, believe it or not, in 2018, and 28 is going to be a 10-year. We're looking at that core science of we could do biology and the environment and physics in the universe at the same time for $160,000 in 1 year, or we could actually break it into 2 pieces, but we still think it should come in at around $160,000. So over the forecast, we're looking at spending $2.3 million, almost $2.4 million in 7 years for science. For career and technical education, we're looking at some smaller costs. These are, of course, very specific to a couple of courses within our pathway. The Cisco networking piece is actually, we've completed with most of the adoption pieces on that for implementation next year at Jackson High School. It's about $20,000. Mechatronics is an advanced manufacturing. It's some innovation with those pieces, but in 2026 and 27, we expect to be implementing that at the cost of $50,000. And then computer science in 27 and 28. The biggest driver for adding computer science onto this adoption forecast is that if you refer back to your slide with the standards revision, the state is looking at computer science courses. And I believe right now in the legislature, or at least they're toying around with it, is whether or not that's going to either be a graduation requirement or a course requirement for students. So in anticipation of that, we're looking at what is the curricula that we need to help to support those pieces. Now, CTE courses, career and technical ed, is a little bit different. This doesn't typically come out of a general fund. This actually comes out of a restricted budget with either the Perkins grant or CTE funding from the state. But that's looking over the next 7 years in the course, 7 years, $130,000. Visual and performing arts, we are looking at the big pieces for this one is recently in 2023, the state did make a requirement for K-8 arts education, and we haven't done some of these pieces that I can actually see where we have P5 general music. It's a smaller adoption, even though it covers 18 schools. Typically, there is 1 teacher at each school. So we're looking at about $200,000 in 25-26. 6-12 choral music, $150,000 in 26-27. And then the theater arts in 27-28. It's a smaller adoption, but it is a mighty adoption. We have a growing drama departments in all of our high schools, and we hope to support that with good curricula. And then finally in 28-29, really looking at 6-12 instrumental curricula. Now, you'll notice that that's $250,000, and if you've ever had to buy a tuba, you know that's probably not a lot of instruments. But what we're hoping to do is provide some coordination around the fine arts standards for all of our schools with all of our 6-12 instrumental programming. So the standards revision for this particular content area will be revised by and completed by 2026. So we're hoping to implement in the 28 school year. Health and fitness, you'll hear tonight an adoption for 5th grade sexual education, but in 2026 and 27, we're looking at physical education for the P5 level, and in 27-28, high school health and fitness. The biggest driver on that, of course, is the standards revision completion date in 2025 and implementation in 27. Once we have an idea about what those standards and revisions look like, we'll have a better idea about what we need to do to revise our existing curriculum for this area. And then language acquisition. Now this is a little bit different because we have both language acquisition for multilingual learners in that first row. We are currently in a process, and I think in April the board will hear our recommendation for our 6-12 multilingual learners English language development, or ELD curriculum. It's a smaller adoption, but it is really, really critical that we have good materials to help our growing ML population. In 27 and through 2030, you'll see Spanish language arts for grades 6 through 8 at the cost of about $65,000. The reason that year of implementation looks a little bit different, other than just a one-year implementation, is because that is to provide content and curricula for our dual language programs that will be at the middle level. And what we'll do is we'll actually adopt and train 6th grade in the first year, 7th grade in the next year, and 8th grade in that final year of that implementation. So we won't do all 6th, 7th, and 8th grade all at the same time. We'll actually roll it up as those students roll up in that cohort. And then finally in 2030, 31, which is that seems really far out, but we'll be looking at our AP German, AP Spanish, and AP French. And we know that AP Spanish will also coincide with some of our dual language high school programming. Social studies is our final one tonight, and we are currently doing some Washington State history right now with an adoption cost of about $75,000 for implementation next year. In 26 and 27, we'll be looking at grade 6 world and grade 8 US history for about $125,000. In 27 and 28, high school core history classes at the cost of $200,000. And then finally in 28, 29, our AP high school courses, so those advanced high school classes in world history, US history, AP Gov, human geography, psychology for $120,000. We need continued development and partnership for the since time immemorial implementation, and those will be critical components in all of those adoption processes. So for social studies, about $500,000 over the next 7 years. So with all of those content areas kind of lumped together, we're looking at probably about $8.35 million over the next 7 years. And our estimated annual maintenance cost is about $2.5 million. And what that means is we need to purchase over the next 7 years, $8.35 million worth of curricular materials. But just to continue the maintenance of existing curricula, buying the consumables we've already adopted, usually that annual maintenance cost is about $2.5 million. All of our numbers really are estimates, and they do take into account things like annual enrollment, inflation, and growing interest in particular content areas. There are some areas that we know in our region are becoming more and more high demand, and so we need to think about how we can adjust and meet the needs of the interest that we have from our students, as well as the interest that we have from our local community about what we can do to provide coordination with career and college readiness in our area. So our next steps really are reviewing current curricula in all areas to ensure that we have that multiple perspectives that are representative. We want to ensure that we have inclusive curricula. We also have additional curricula department. We bring that to our cabinet for review for priority areas and material adoption. So there's a broader sense of it's not just a chief academic officer making the call. We actually have a team of really brilliant leaders in our district who really help us to inform what's happening in our schools and really responding to our students' needs. We still need to really make sure that we are coordinating with our long-term fiscal planning. That's a really important one. We don't ever want to say, well, we can't afford this really high-quality curricula, so we're going to do something different. We're going to think outside of the box. We're going to be creative. We may have to modify how we train things, but one of the things that our academics department has really learned throughout the pandemic is we find some really creative ways to provide meaningful professional development and access to that curricula. And then we continue to monitor short and long-term implications, ebooks, digital content, things that are facilitated with our one-to-one digital platforms, especially with the rollout of our new student information system. Those are things that we all take into consideration. And that being said, we've left some opportunity for questions or comments, and I thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. And I think my 10 years on the board, that is the best presentation we've had about curriculum. So thank you so much. The most robust. Are there any questions or comments? Yeah, Caroline.
Thank you. I agree. One thing that I really appreciated is the chart of the Washington State Learning Standards, and that we can just go out and look at that and see when, and also your the district's alignment to that as you consider implementation. I did notice on that chart, right underneath each item, I think it was slide 6, they did have the adopted date, And that would be something I would love to see on our curriculum spreadsheet that you put together, so we know when it was last adopted.
Got it.
As we move forward. And then I guess my general question is there sort of within our district or just general knowledge in school districts, a typical amount of time when you try and refresh curriculum, or is it really subject specific and cost driven and?
Yes, we try and do a reevaluation within 10 years. Sometimes I think it is really dependent on the content and curricula. When the Common Core was adopted in 2011 for English language arts and math, for example, we didn't have we had an ELA adoption in 2016, and yet even though, for P5, excuse me, even though we had content that was aligned to standards, we wanted to ensure that we were providing other opportunities to ensure that we have the curricula and the materials that students really could utilize in ways that were meaningful. So when we had those previous adoptions, we wanted to ensure that we had guided level reading books and things like that. And as science of reading has developed in these last few years, we're really fortunate that that is a piece of our existing curricula. So that curricular particular, even though we're going on almost 8 years for that, it still has standards aligned pieces, whereas mathematics has shifted a little bit. And so really thinking about how are we engaging kids or our students in really authentic ways to build more critical thinking as opposed to just understanding numeracy and fluency. So it really does depend on the content area, but we try and shoot for evaluation at every 7 to 10 years, because it seems like it's when the state and sometimes the federal, those Common Core state standards are national standards, so sometimes they're doing reviews as well, so it seems to work pretty well.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
More of a comment. I was interested in the ELA and that component, including digital citizenship, which is oh boy. So December of '24 they're going to be the new standards coming out, and it looks like, and we're going to be focusing on implementation for the 27-28 for that, right?
For elementary, we will look at, there we go. In Core ELA, so 27-28 for 6-12 and 27-28 for the P5. However, I will say that many, especially at the secondary level, our teacher librarians do an amazing job working with our LITS team to help promote digital citizenship. And that Everett Public has been a real forerunner in that because of our one-to-one platform, because of that partnership. When we talk about, we're not just switching from paper pencil to computers, we're actually talking about developing 21st century skills, 21st century learners, and students who can function within a digital environment. So we've been on the forefront with a lot of those pieces. And because of our one-to-one platform, we were able to incorporate a lot of those pieces. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what those revisions look like at the end of this year. But I have a strong suspicion that Everett Public Schools is already meeting some of those pieces. And if we need to adjust those, we won't need big swings. It will be some tweaking that we can do.
Ms. Gilbertson, do you have any questions? I just have, I guess maybe you don't know yet, but for the ELA and math adoptions, that P5, when you say dividing it, will it be age banded, or have you decided that yet?
We haven't committed to that yet. So we would prefer to do things like grade banding, so like a K2 first rollout and then 3-5. We don't believe in doing like kind of a north end or south end. That doesn't seem equitable. We want to ensure that we have the opportunities. I think the other thing is we're really waiting to see what those revised standards look like. If we see significant changes in the grade 3-5 band, that might be the opportunity for us to really get as long of a runway as possible before that new state assessment comes out. It really is going to depend. So while we know we want to break it into 2 phases for some fiduciary responsibility, we also want to ensure that we're doing it in a very intentional way that makes the most sense to benefit our learners and our families.
Yeah, and I appreciate the word equitable, because that was something, especially when we went with the Common Core and the springboard, that, the mobility of our kids, they can move and be about within a week of things. And so it would be sad that if a kindergartner had to move.
It's one of the biggest benefits of having a coordinated and aligned system like we do, so that regardless of the zip code, regardless of you are Woodside or Whittier, your students are going to get the same guaranteed viable curricula. And we've really got a great, I would say, building leadership and building teaching and paraeducator staff who are really committed to making sure that we provide those equitable opportunities for our students across this district.
Well, thank you so much. I think at this time, because some of us have been sitting since about 3:30, I will ask for a 10-minute break, so that'll bring us back about 6:15. So we will be at recess for about 10 minutes.
It's fine.
Okay. Thank you and welcome back. We will now move on to section 14.0, which is unfinished business, and there's none for this meeting. That moves us on to section 15.0, new business, which is there are two pieces of new business tonight. The first being the fifth grade sex education curriculum adoption first reading. And Mr. Anderson and Dr. Bowden?
Excellent. Well, thank you, President Mitchell, Board of Directors, Dr. Salzman. We are actually here tonight to present the fifth grade sexual health adoption as presented by Anthony Anderson, who's the Director of CTE Choice Programs, as well as Health and Fitness. So without further ado, Mr. Anderson.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity. Student representatives, Board of Directors, Board President, Director Mitchell, and Dr. Salzman, Superintendent. Thank you for the opportunity to be here to talk about our fifth grade sexual health adoption. What we're going to talk about tonight is share the sexual health education adoption process, explain characteristics of the recommended instruction and material, and then we're going to request for the board to adopt this curriculum. Our alignment to the strategic plan is when you look at our pillars of equitable access and effective instruction and aligning to our priority student outcomes, strengthening student wellness, engagement, and safety. When we did our needs assessment, we looked at fifth grade sexual education based on the new laws coming down from OSPI. All public schools must provide comprehensive sexual health education to all students by the 22-23 school year. Instruction must be consistent with health and PE standards. And right now, the reason we're updating the curriculum is because the no curriculum is no longer viable as a comprehensive sexual health education curriculum. Based on the requirements, schools must teach the comprehensive sexual health education no later than the fifth grade, and required topics for this instruction follow the RCW, or HIV and STD prevention, which talks about how the communicable diseases are transmitted, human growth and development, which talks about puberty, bystander intervention and affirmative consent, which talks about how to intervene when you see bullying and unhealthy relationships, which talks about the next area there, healthy relationships with friends and family, and how to avoid exploitative relationships. This is just a reminder that throughout all of this, parents or legal guardians who wish to have their child excused from any individual or the full curriculum of sexual education may do so by opting out. We give them the 30-day consent, and we'll talk a little bit more about the curriculum that we're proposing on how that is actually accessible. As per OSPI, the curriculum must be age-appropriate in instruction, accurate in its medical and scientific information, and inclusive of all students. The process we follow goes right with what Dr. Bowden was talking about earlier. We recruited a curriculum adoption team, which consisted of health teachers, fifth grade teachers, district administrators, the DEI department members, community members, and we had members from the Snohomish County Health Department. I'll go back up to talk about our high school members, which you'll see some of the comments they made earlier. We gave them the opportunity for our high school students to talk about in our Intro to Ed class, what goes on later. We identified the curriculum that best fit based on the requirements and District Policy 2311 following procedures of 2311P. Those procedures were followed. As you can see, all the documentation was put together. We hosted 2 community review opportunities, and the IMC reviewed the curriculum material, and it passed unanimously. The curriculum we're recommending is Family, Life, and Sexual Health Flash. And as you can see on the emblem there, it was co-developed by Seattle Public Schools and King County Health Department. Flash curriculum is used throughout our region, and actually it's a nationally used curriculum. Age appropriate in instruction. It aligns with the national and state standards. It aligns with the Washington State AIDS Omnibus Act and is adaptable to differentiate instruction and age appropriate. When looking at accurate and medical and scientific information, again, it aligns with the Omnibus Act. It follows the state RCW and includes medically accurate information. Inclusive of all students, it's trauma-informed and inclusive, maintains neutral bias in all criteria, and it gives families the opportunity to engage in activities that are relevant and creative opportunities for conversation. So with this student being accessible, it gives families the opportunity to access it. When we look at student voice, students felt we needed a curriculum that is inclusive for all students at the 5th grade level. That's what high school students felt. We need students to respect healthy relationships earlier in school. Some of this conversation was centered around some of the HIB when we're talking about harassment, intimidation, and bullying. They felt students, if they learned earlier, that would prevent some of that as they developed and went later into their educational K-12 experience. Some of our teacher voice, after reviewing the curriculum, the information allows for parental support and ongoing professional learning for staff. And then one of our family community members, I appreciate the sexual abuse and healthy relationships are being discussed. So if adopted, the implementation process, our committee, which is approximately going to be 5 members to 6 members of the team. The committee will provide professional development for teachers, which is about 75 teachers at this time. The great thing about this curriculum is it is free, but it will have costs associated with professional learning and ongoing development with other additional resources. So teachers will be trained in the Flash design lessons, and one of the key things is building those skills and answering difficult questions and making sure that those questions follow the guidelines. And thank you for your time tonight, and we're asking for you to look at this curriculum at first reading, provide me with any input so we can move it on to second reading.
Are there any questions?
I have some comments.
Yes, please.
I'm really excited to see that the recommendations to use Flash. I personally have been involved in the sex ed curriculum bill over the past few years. I brought it forth as a college student to Chris Reichdahl, specifically around consent and teaching consent at an early age, because I again, when I was at college doing student lobbying, we found that there's this program up in Alaska, the 4FR curriculum, which was a curriculum that Alaskan Native villages and their school systems used. They found to be incredibly effective at reducing rates of sexual assault and abusive relationships later on in life. And I just thought it was so impactful to me that it convinced me and my student government to get involved in lobbying around K-12 curriculum, again, as a higher education institution. And it was just really interesting to see kind of the effects of that, of how those decisions that we make in K-5 will wind up impacting the college campus environment and the safety of our students as they grow older. And so just really excited to see this, and yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else? I just have one question really about the flavor or sentiment of the community engagement. Was there a good enough turnout? And we saw 2 positive comments, but was that pretty much the sentiment?
It was 3. 3 individuals showed up for the community portion, but when we look at parents and other community members, that's why we had the Snohomish Health Department there as representation. And many of the bodies that were involved in the review committee were also parents that brought up a lot of concerns around being age appropriate when we align this to the standards for 5th grade.
Thank you, and I do think having a few people show up really does show that there's maybe no anger out there about it, maybe some concerns, and that people trust us, so thank you. For this item, I thought this would be a great opportunity for how we adopted the student advisory vote. So Ms. Gilbertson, would you like us to move this to second reading? Yes. Okay, great, thank you. And so are there any objections for us moving this by general consent to second reading? Okay, then hearing none, this item is moved to second reading by general consent. Thank you.
I do have a further question for either Anthony or Shelley. On the affirmative consent piece, are we doing anything before 5th grade?
Actually, in the SEL curriculum that is for the K through 3, they do talk about that, the what's healthy touching, and then how
And boundaries.
and boundaries, yes.
So our social emotional curriculum, so in comprehensive sexual health education law, K3, we're required to teach social emotional learning. And some of those bystander education components, teaching about those healthy boundaries and healthy relationships do exist in our K3 curricula at the social emotional level. So while it's not exactly the same as what you would see at older levels, it is the foundational pieces in which we build to create a really comprehensive sexual education, sexual health and education program.
And I think that that's just really important for the community to understand that when we're talking about consent, especially at an early age, we're just talking about telling 5-year-olds, ask before you hug one another. And just really basic, simple stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to section 15.02, Student Information Systems Update. Mr. Beckley.
Good evening. Good evening, President Mitchell, fellow directors, Dr. Saltzman, and the community. I have some really great news to share with you tonight, and it's my pleasure to give you an update on the student information selection process and ask for your approval to accept our recommendation and authorize Dr. Saltzman to sign a 5-year agreement as such. So this, again, is a reminder for our community as a project that is funded by the 2022 capital levy that was approved by the voters, and a promise we made to our community that we would update our student information system and replace it. And this is the beginning of that process. So we're really excited to share this update with you tonight. The objectives of tonight's presentation are to, let me get to that, to share the recommendation with you and how we got to this point, including stakeholder feedback, to review the project timeline with you. I was with you in January, so kind of updating you up to this point. Highlight the next steps in the project, and again, request your approval of where we're at in the process. So our recommendation is to go with Synergy by EduPoint as our new student information system. And this is based on the feedback from the demonstrations that first week of December here at the CRC that I told you about in January. And we had 45 breakout rooms, and it received the recommendation from all 45 breakout rooms, from every content area and from every group. So clearly it was the top choice. I've included here on this slide several of the reasons that were highlighted frequently by the feedback from our stakeholders. The idea of a single platform, the idea of the functionality in each of these different modules and what they provided. It was a more modern looking interface. The way it looked seemed more modern. the way it operated. It was capable and responsive and a really robust translation tool that was, that's connected to our translation tools with Google and Microsoft. It had a reduction to our budget impact of what we're currently doing, and I'll share that in a moment. And they had a great training plan and program, some outstanding customer service support that they included as part of their contract. And clearly, our groups were interested in what kind of training support and materials do you provide, and that it was a big selling point. And from our standpoint, behind the scenes, it has really great and more modern security features that we see in more current products than we're currently experiencing. Here's just a snapshot of some of the feedback that I've highlighted from some of the different teacher groups. It's certainly not all the feedback, but you can kind of see from what they are saying about the things that they liked about what they saw, and the reasons for their preference towards Synergy over the other demos. This is just a snapshot again, as you read through it. It is not all the feedback, but it does kind of give us a general sense of what we heard over and over again. And you can see all of our groups here are represented, from our students to our office, to our teachers, to our administrators, all of them really excited about this. This slide highlights what we're currently doing with what we will be moving towards. And I want to share sort of what this sort of means. And in our current system, eSchool is our student information system. And eSchool has been with us for over 10 years. And so over time, it has had limited and more limited capabilities. And so as such, we've had to add things that do things that we want our student information system to do. And so you see the back and forth arrow, and that's because we've had to build specialized integrations to make it work, to make it provide us what we need outside of the core system. And so you can see all the different things we've added to our student information system. With Synergy, those things are embedded in it, and you can see the color coding. I'll just highlight Insight. So Insight is a data analytics tool, and eSchool doesn't provide us what we want. So with data dashboards and what we, things we want to be able to produce and share with our teams to have data inform our practice. And so we have purchased Insight as to supplement our eSchool, but in Synergy, it's part of their data analytics tool. And in many ways, it's more robust and better than our current Insight. And so I kind of color-coded what we currently do with what it would be replaced. And so all of those demonstration modules highlighted from our different stakeholder groups how these would operate. There's really two exceptions to that. And one is the high school and beyond planning tool. And we know, in an earlier Friday report, it was shared the work that OSPI is doing with the high school and beyond planning tool of kind of narrowing it down to the top 7 choices. We know that Power Schools tool, Naviance, is not one of OSPI's recommended high school and beyond planning tools, but we don't know where they're going to end up to start the 25-26 school year off. But we know it's not Naviance, and we know it's not Synergy. So it's going to be something that's going to be a tool that will need to integrate with Synergy. And so we'll work really closely with them on making sure that that's the case. And Synergy has several other districts in Washington State that will be in the same boat as us. We also need kind of further vetting of their MTSS tool. We felt like we needed more time with it, especially with the student success platform and how it compares with Panorama. And so I left Panorama there because we just need more time. And that's something we included in the contract that we can add later. We don't need to make a decision right now, but they know that's a possibility. But they also know that they might need to integrate with our Panorama tool based on what that looks like over the next few weeks. We'll be vetting that. So again, you can see how this idea of one platform, one all-encompassing platform, is pretty much the reality, and we're really excited about that. I mentioned about the budget impact. This gives you a comparison from what we're currently doing in that cost to what we would be doing with Synergy. So all of those things in the blue box are in Synergy, except for I've included Panorama there, and you can see the cost comparison. Quite a significant impact. And you think about would be signing if you approve a 5-year contract. Over 5 years, that really adds up. So it's exciting for what it produces for less of a budget impact. So we're excited about that. This is the timeline, again, from between January, when I presented to you last, we looked through the stakeholder feedback. We spent some time with Synergy negotiating contract language and what that would look like. That really was between our last meeting and today. If you approve this and we move forward, we launch into our kickoff meeting as soon as we're able to send them a signed contract. And that starts our project planning and preparation right away. I know it sounds like a long runway, but it is going to take a lot of time to get our staff to get ready and then to train our staff to be ready to start that 25-26 school year off. And so really, if you go with our recommendation and you approve this, we will really, the importance of a comprehensive communication plan has got to be first and foremost as we educate our constituents, our community, our public, but also our staff about what's to come. What are the opportunities for their professional development? What's the training look like? That will all be part of this as well. And that behind the scenes infrastructure and data migration will be part of that work that will start really in March and April right away. So I would welcome any questions and then ask for your approval of our recommendation.
Are there any questions?
I just have a quick comment. This is really cool. The fact that, we can take all these different platforms and combine them into one at a lower cost is just like a big win-win.
Yeah,
So
we
good
would
job.
agree.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We're excited.
I just have might be more complicated, but we've had Naviance for over a decade, I think. With whatever the state's doing, will there be a way to crosswalk that in? Or will kids have to rebuild what they built in 8th grade now that they're going to be juniors or something? Or do we know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if I can answer that.
Okay.
Perhaps Dr. Bowden can.
Okay.
I see her walking towards.
I'm not sure anyone can answer that yet.
Okay.
But when they have their 7 finalists right now for those high school and beyond platforms. Our College and Career Readiness Department is tracking that very closely, attending all of those sessions that OSPI is providing and the state is providing on those different pieces. It will be one of the pieces that we're asking for is how many districts will be in the same situation, not necessarily with Naviance, but other HSMB platforms. So that will be one of the questions that we continue to ask is what can we do for the students who are already in one system? How can we transfer in a seamless way all of that learning and work into their high school and beyond plan that exists in a different platform. So we don't have the answer yet, but we will hopefully have one as soon as we make a decision. They make a decision on what that
Do we have a timeline for OSPI?
They're hoping by the end of this year.
Okay.
Yep, and in fact, actually, they've said April. Sometimes that happens in April, sometimes that happens May or June, but we're anticipating April for a decision.
And I assume we'll be given an update when that happens and.
Yes,
when
that's
you know.
correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the student information system update?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay, thank you. Is there any discussion? I would like to, again, with this item, because it directly impacts a student, I would like to request an advisory vote from Ms. Gilbertson. Would you like us to approve this item?
Yes.
Thank you. So we will now proceed to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, the motion carries. The student information system is adopted.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So now we'll move on to section 15.03, which is the appointment of a board representative to the Student Representative Selection Committee. And this is something that we each sort of take turns on. And so this is the time for us to nominate somebody to help interview our next student. I would like to nominate Director Rovolinski. I did reach out to him because he would be the next most senior. And he did say he was excited about this, but wanted to make sure it was up for discussion. If anybody opposed or had a different feeling, I don't think we have to vote on it. It's just sort of he wants to do it.
Excellent recommendation.
Okay.
Agreed.
Thank you. And Director Atkins, look forward to doing it next year. It's about an hour commitment and it's a great, great opportunity. So if you can let Roman know. Oh, we do have to vote? Okay, I guess we do have to vote. Is there a motion to approve Director Rovolinski to the committee?
So moved?
Second.
Okay, it has been moved by Director Mason, I forgot that on the last thing, and seconded by Director Adkins to appoint Director Rovolinski to this Student Representative Selection Committee. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, aye. All those opposed say no. The motion carries. If you can please let him know. Should have asked the question before the meeting of what I had to do there. Okay, now we have policies. Moving on to section 15.04, 5, 6, and 7. So I will let you present all 4 policies.
Well, we began with a full house tonight. I was pretty excited to present policies to a packed room, but here we are at the end of the meeting. So without further ado, tonight we have 4 policies for your consideration. The first proposed revision for policy 2004 accountability goals are from WASDA after receiving questions regarding their model policy's current legal status and relevance, specifically RCW 28A 655-100 and WAC 180-105-020, which mandate that school districts establish and report annual district-wide and school-level performance improvement goals. The proposed revisions before you align with all legal requirements, include consistent reference to federal requirements within the text, and a revision to the title of the policy itself.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I had one quick question. I was just curious, and I apologize because I don't recall last, but when does the board typically approve these? I know Catherine Matthews often gives us a presentation.
That is exactly it. She goes through the accountability and the district-wide goals, typically at the very start of the school year, as you were referencing, and that is the official movement of the board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So then next.
Okay. Next, we have policy 2215, highly capable program. Revisions correct misinformation about the requirements as outlined in Senate Bill 5072, which was approved in 2023. The proposed revisions address the fact that the law does not require all students to be screened, rather that school districts must universally screen for only 2 elementary grade levels. In Everett Public Schools, our policy, when we first revised it, identified grades 1 and 5, and it remains the same. Additionally, the requirement for multiple objective criteria and multiple pathways remain in statute and regulation and are included within our policy. So very small here revision.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Next, we have proposed revisions to policy 2409, granting equivalency credit. This is to comply with both House Bill 1658 and Senate Bill 5617 regarding skill centers, school district course equivalencies, which requires course equivalencies to be adopted for career and technical high school courses offered to students in high schools and skill centers. So the revision here is primarily are just outlining our obligation if we participate within a skill center, which we do, and we have that interlocal agreement that any student who is participating in a skill center, we would offer the equivalency credit towards graduation here in Everett Public Schools. Yes.
Yes.
Is that current practice in our district at this time?
Yes.
Okay, I thought so.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
And finally, the proposed new policy 2417, performance-based pathway for high school graduation, complies with House Bill 1308, creating a new performance-based graduation pathway option. The performance-based pathway allows students to show what they know and can do through experiential learning that aligns with their individual goals for high school and beyond. This student-centered pathway is customizable with the aim of being relevant and engaging to the student. School districts must adopt a local policy that meets the state requirements before offering the performance-based pathway option for students towards graduation.
Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. By general consent, we will move these to second reading.
Thank you.
Now we move on to section 16.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Saltzman, what is planned for upcoming agenda items and meetings?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board Directors and the public this evening. At the February 15th special meeting, board members will participate in a community budget listening session at Evergreen Middle School. On February 22nd, 2024, special meeting, board members will participate in the Strategic Progress Monitoring Session 2. At the regular meeting on March 12th, 2024, the following agenda will contain this: a strategic plan metrics report, the 5th grade sexual education curriculum adoption for second reading, several policies for second reading, a recognition of the Jackson High School Orchestra, which we heard tonight. A recognition of February's core value champions will be the March core value champions, PTSA council recognition, special education spotlight presentation, an enrollment outlook, the January financial report, building conditions and summaries, and any surplus technology and electronics. Just a point of privilege, Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
Just want to stress to the community tonight that with the student information systems update, we will not miss a beat. We're not only going to get our teachers trained and update our students. It will be new, but we promise you that we will get through this patiently and we'll get it done right for our community. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Section 17.0, executive closed session, and there's none for this meeting. Section 18.0, adjournment. And I'm going to say, with all those preambles, we saved about 45 minutes potentially. So thank you. So this meeting is adjourned.